Hi everyone! Today I am going to be talking about the different books I want to read in 2021. This video is going to be divided in different genres, and in every category I will be briefly talking about each book that I want to read. The first genre is science fiction. This is actually a genre I don't really read much of, but I really want to read the two books that are in this category. The first book is Dune by Frank Herbert. This is a science fiction fantasy classic, and the reason why I want to read this is because it's been talked about a lot recently, especially because of the new film coming out this year. Dune is based on a complex imagined society roughly 20,000 years into the future. The setting is in the year 10,191, where human beings have spread out and colonized different planets in the universe. Paul Atreides, the main character of the book, and his family are trying to move to a planet called Arrakis. Arrakis is very valuable because it has the last melange, which is the most sought after substance among mankind. However, making that journey and retaining his family's power isn't that easy, and it's up to Paul to save his family's legacy. The next book is Timeline by Michael Crichton. This is science fiction and a time travel story. The story is based on a group of friends who travel to 14th century France to save their professor. I really want to read this book because I love time travel tropes, and surprisingly I barely read any books with them, but I love watching them in films, and I just think it's very interesting, and I've heard very good things about this book, as well as the author Michael Crichton, which, if you didn't know, is the author of the very praised and well-known Jurassic Park. Next up, we have mystery. Mystery is a genre that I'm really fond of. I just think it's always really interesting, and all the different stories that can come up with, and solving mysteries is just incredibly fun. So the first book in this category is going to be Sherlock Holmes. The Adventures and Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes is a very well-known classic mystery, and I'd be very surprised if you didn't know who Sherlock Holmes is. I want to read this book because it would be my second time reading it, and I barely remember anything that happens in the book, so it's kind of like my first time reading it. Our second mystery novel is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This is a mystery thriller fiction novel, and it's about Evelyn Hardcastle, who will die every day until Aidan Bishop is able to figure out who the killer is and will be able to break this cycle. However, Aidan wakes up in the body of a different guest at Blackheath Manor every day, and some of his hosts are much more helpful than others. I've honestly heard really good things about this book from the people who have read it, and I'm definitely looking for more thrillers to read, especially because I've only read one, and that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I really enjoyed it, so I'm really excited to start this book. And now a genre that I do read a bit of every once in a while, nonfiction. So for this genre, the book I have is The Last Lecture. The Last Lecture is an autobiography memoir which is about the importance of overcoming obstacles and seizing every moment to its fullest potential. These types of books are always really interesting and intriguing to read, and I always find them very enjoyable, so I'm really excited to read this. And now a very popular genre, adventure. So the first books I'm going to be reading in this category is the Hunger Games series by Susan Collins. I honestly think that this is one of the most well-known and praised series when it comes to YA, and I've surprisingly never read them, and I barely know anything about them. Saying that, it's a fiction dystopian series which is about, once known as North America, lies the nation of Panem, a shining capital surrounded by 12 outlying districts. The capital is harsh and cruel and keeps the districts in line by forcing them to all send one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to participate in the annual Hunger Games. 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen, who lives alone with her mother and younger sister, regards it as a death sentence when she steps forward to take her sister's place in the games. And now a classic adventure, The Count of Monte Cristo. This historical fiction is about Edmond Dante, who is thrown in prison for a crime he has not committed. This book is a very well-known story and is a very praised novel and movie, and I've honestly heard really good things about it. And since it's a classic, I really enjoy myself when reading classics, and I find them always really entertaining and end up being some of my favorite books, so I'm really excited to read this. Speaking of classics, we have To Kill a Mockingbird. Historical fiction is not a genre I generally reach out, but this book as well is really praised and well known, and I've been meaning to read it for a while. To Kill a Mockingbird is a novel by Harper Lee, which was published in 1960. It was immediately successful and one of the most praised books of all time. The plot and characters are loosely based on Harper Lee's surroundings, from her family to her neighbors, and most importantly, an event that occurred near her hometown in 1936. And now we have reached the very last category, which is not a genre, but instead authors I'm looking forward to read this year. So last year I was able to read a lot of books, and from these books I found authors that I had never read before, or I just really enjoyed myself reading, so I'm planning on reading 3 specific authors and more of their works this year. These are Stephen King, Jane Austen, and Daphne du Maurier. So from Daphne du Maurier, last year I read Rebecca, especially because of the new movie that had come out from Netflix, and I found this book to be one of my all-time favorites. It's a thriller and considered a mystery, but not really, and it's just very suspenseful, and it honestly keeps you reading until you finish the book. And I just think it's so well written, and the plot, the character, everything is absolutely amazing, and I really recommend this book, and I'm really excited to read more from Daphne du Maurier. Next up, we have Stephen King. I've actually only read 2 of his novels, Pet Sematary and The Institute, and I just find them really entertaining, and I really like his writing style, and I'm trying to look for more mysteries and thrillers to read, so I think this is the author to go to. I'm planning on reading The Shining, a very well-known story from him, especially because of the movie, and its sequel, Dr. Sleep. And last but certainly not least, the one and only Jane Austen. I have read Pride and Prejudice and Emma only a few days ago, and I love them. I'm currently reading Sense and Sensibility, and I love Jane Austen's writing style, her characters, and just the stories in general. They just feel so cozy, if that makes sense, and classics, like I mentioned many times in this video, are some of my favorite books to read, and I'm really excited to read more of her main novels. So those are all of the books I'm going to be talking about in this video. There are definitely more novels I am looking forward to read in 2021. So I hope you enjoyed the video and found some books that maybe you're interested in reading as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.